perfectly good motto, too, only of course it hasn't got any style to it. That's why I didn't want the girls to see it," she confided a bit drearily. Then palpably before their eyes they saw her spirit leap into ineffable pride. "My father gave it to me," she announced briskly, "and my father said that, when I came home in June, if I could honestly say that I'd never once been bumptious all my 3 years here, he'd give me a heifer and—" "Well, I guess you've lost your heifer," said the senior surgeon bluntly. "Lost my heifer!" gasped the girl. Big-eyed and incredulous, she stood for an instant staring back and forth from the superintendent's face to the senior surgeon's. "You mean," she stammered, "you mean that I've been bumptious just now? You mean that, after all these years of Meechan meekness, I've lost—" Plainly, even to the senior surgeon and the superintendent, the bones in her knees weakened suddenly like knots of tissue paper. No power on earth could have made her break discipline by taking a chair while the senior surgeon stood, so she sank limply down to the floor instead, with two great solemn tears welling slowly through the fingers with which she tried vainly to cover her face. "And the heifer was brown, with one white ear. It was awful cunning," she confided mumblingly. "And it ate from my hand, all warm and sticky, like loving sandpaper." There was no protest in her voice, nor any whine of complaint, but merely the abject submission to fate of one who from earliest infancy had seen other crops blighted by other frosts. Then tremulously, with the air of one who, just as a matter of spiritual tidiness, would purge her soul of all sad secrets, she lifted her entrancing, tear-flushed face from her strong, sturdy, utterly unemotional fingers, and stared with amazing blueness, amazing blandness into the senior surgeon's scowling scrutiny. "And I'd named her for you," she said. "I'd named her Patience for you." Instantly, then, she scrambled to her knees to try and assuage by some miraculous apology the horrible shock which she read in the senior surgeon's face. "Oh, of course, sir, I know it isn't scientific," she pleaded desperately. "Oh, of course, sir, I know it isn't scientific at all. But up where I live, you know, instead of praying for anybody, we name a young animal for the virtue that that person seems to need the most, and if you tend the young animal carefully and train it right, why, it's just superstition, of course, but oh, sir," she floundered helplessly, "the virtue you needed most in your business was what I meant. Oh, really, sir, I never thought of criticizing your character." Gruffly the senior surgeon laughed. Embarrassment was in the laugh, and anger, and a fierce, fiery sort of resentment against both the embarrassment and the anger, but no possible trace of amusement. Impatiently he glanced up at the fast-speeding clock. "Good Lord!" he exclaimed. "I'm an hour late now." Scowling like a pirate, he clicked the cover of his watch open and shut for an uncertain instant. Then suddenly he laughed again, and there was nothing whatsoever in his laugh this time except just amusement. "See here, Miss Bozzy Tamer," he said. "If the superintendent is willing, go get your hat and coat, and I'll take you out on that meningitis case with me. It's a 30-mile run if it's a block, and I guess if you sit on the front seat it will blow the cobwebs out of your brain, if anything will," he finished, not unkindly. Like a white hen sensing the approach of some utterly unseen danger, the superintendent seemed to bristle suddenly in every direction. "It's a bit irregular," she protested in her most even tone. "Bah! So are some of the most useful of the French verbs," snapped the senior surgeon. In the midst of authority his voice could be inestimably soft and reassuring, but sometimes on the brink of asserting set authority he had a tone that was distinctly unpleasant. "Oh, very well," conceded the superintendent, with some waspishness. Hazily, for an instant, Ray Malgregor stood staring into the superintendent's uncordial face. "I'd apologize," she faltered. "But I don't even know what I said. It just blew up." perfectly coldly and perfectly civilly the superintendent received the overture. "It was quite evident, Miss Malgregor, that you were not altogether responsible at the moment," she conceded in common justice. Heavily then, like a person walking in her sleep, the girl trailed out of the room to get her coat and hat. Slamming one desk drawer after another, the superintendent drowned the sluggish sound of her retreating footsteps. "There goes my best nurse," she said grimly. "My very best nurse. Oh no, not the most brilliant, I didn't mean that, but the most reliable. The most nearly perfect human machine that it has ever been my privilege to see turned out. The one girl that week in, week out, month after month, and year after year, has always done what she's told, when she was told, and in the exact way she was told. Without questioning anything, without protesting anything, without supplementing anything, with some disastrous original conviction of her own. And look at her now!" Tragically, the superintendent rubbed her hand across her worried brow. "Coffee, you said it was?" she asked skeptically. "Are there any special antidotes for coffee?" With a queer little quirk to his mouth, the gruff senior surgeon jerked his glance back from the open window, where, with the gleam of a slim, torn boyish ankle, the frisky young spring went scurrying through the tree-tops. "What's that you asked?" he quizzed sharply. "Any antidotes for coffee? Yes, dozens of them, but none for spring." "Spring?" sniffed the superintendent. A little shiveringly she reached out and gathered a white knitted shawl around her shoulders. "Spring? I don't see what spring's got to do with Ray Malgregor or any other young outlaw in my graduating class. If graduation came in November, it would be just the same. They're a set of ingrates, every one of them." Vehemently she turned aside to her card index of names and slapped the cards through one by one without finding one single soothing exception. "Yes, sir, a set of ingrates," she repeated accusingly. "Spend your life trying to teach them what to do and how to do it, cram ideas into those that haven't got any, and yank ideas out of those who have got too many. Refine them, toughen them, scold them, coax them, everlastingly drill and discipline them. And then, just as you get them to a place where they move like clockwork, and you actually believe you can trust them, then graduation day comes around, and they think they're all safe, and every single individual member of the class breaks out and runs amok with the one daredevil deed she's been itching to do every day the past 3 years. Why, this very morning I caught the president of the senior class, with a breakfast tray in her hands, stealing the cherry out of her patient's grapefruit. And 3 of the girls reported for duty as bold as brass, with their hair freezed tight as a nigger doll's. And the girl who's going into a convent next week was trying on the laundryman's derby hat as I came up from lunch. And now, the superintendent's voice went suddenly a little hoarse. And now here's Miss Malgregor intriguing to get an automobile ride with you." "Eh?" cried the senior surgeon with a jump. "What? Is this an insane asylum? Is it a Nervine?" Madly he started for the door. "Order a ton of bromides!" he called back over his shoulder. "Order a carload of them! Saturate the whole place with them! Drown the whole damned place!" Halfway down the lower hall, all his nerves on edge, all his unwonted boyish impulsiveness quenched noxiously like a candle flame, he met and passed Ray Malgregor without a sign of recognition. "God, how I hate women!" he kept mumbling to himself as he struggled clumsily all alone into the torn sleeve lining of his $1,000 mink coat. End of chapter 3.